All right, welcome, Pep Man Matt Marr. Welcome to Between the Lines. This is the show where we strictly talk about what's going on between the lines. We're going to do a lot of game previews. We're going to tell you some players to watch. Um, so here we go. It's kind of like old school how we used to do things back in the day. So we got Hopewell and Independence. Hopewell's coming off a tough loss, and so is Independence. Hopewell losing to Olympic, and Independence losing to West Charlotte. Players to watch here: Major Weathers, very talented defensive back. He had a pick six against Cox Mill earlier this season for the Titans. And then Cameron Croma. The Independence offense is off to a little bit of a slow start. He's the trigger man in that offense, so I expect him to bounce back here and kind of get some things going on that side of the football for the Patriots. Two teams. I think Hopewell has played well in spots so far this season. I think Independence made some big strides from their opening loss to Mallard Ridge, especially on the defensive side of football last week against West Charlotte. They just couldn't hold off late in that game, but it's been an interesting game here to watch. Both of these teams are kind of in the middle of the CMS best in our rankings, and be interested to see who pulls this one out. Our next game is Marvin Ridge at Parkwood. Marvin Ridge kind of surprised at how they lost last week. They were kind of flying high. We had them ranked pretty high in the Dirty Dozen, and then they lost to RGK. I believe it was 26-7. And then Parkwood has not played in a little bit. Because of the issues that everyone else has been dealing with out here. But Union County matchup, players to watch. I got the two quarterbacks here. Sophomore Evan Metters for Marvin Ridge. Hopefully they can get those offensive struggles corrected this week. And then Cameron Enos, promising quarterback, for Parkwood. I think he's very talented. I've seen his highlights. I've seen him up close at our camps. Throws the football really well, and he's got some guys to get it to in that Parkwood offense. So I think that game's going to be a fun one to watch down there in Union County. Another fun one to watch is on the west side of Charlotte, part of the West Side Championship Series. We got the Harding Rams going over to take on the West Meck Hawks, traditional West Side rival matchup. Schools are not very far from each other. Players to watch here: Octavian Davis had 7 catches for 105 yards last week in their loss to North Meck, but he continues to be a guy that is one of the best receivers you don't know about in the 704. And then B.D. Waddell the fifth, helping lead the West Meck Hawks to the quietest 3-0 start I think you can ever remember. You look at the teams West Meck has beaten. Montgomery Central, they've beaten Garinger, and they've beaten Rocky River. Those 3 teams have struggled. So in some ways, this might be the biggest test so far for West Meck. And for Harding, they've been close. They were close against West Charlotte. And then North Meck, losing 27-14. Played them even in the second half. Got off to a slow start in that game. So this is an interesting game here. I think this is going to be a really good game to watch. I think it's going to be a competitive game, and we'll see who comes out on top. All right. Our next game, Union Academy and Mountain Island. I was at this game last season. Mountain Island won this game pretty big, behind a big effort on the ground. However, the player to watch I have from Mountain Island is quarterback Dylan Bisson, because he has come out here on fire once again, throwing for 400-plus yards in one of his games so far. They have wins over Anson County and Carolina Bearcats. Cabarrus Stallions, wrong team there. And then for Union Academy, I have Isaac Williams, who's their leading tackler on the defensive side of football. Union Academy has had some struggles, and this is not a great time to play Mountain Island coming off of a bye week. They've been rested, and I'm sure they're anxious to hit their home field once again to try to remain at 3-0, 2-0, excuse me. All right, in our next game, we had the Cabarrus Warriors going on the road to take on the Concord Spiders in a very interesting matchup of 2 teams in, the Concord area, but they have never met before. So, pretty cool here. So, our players to watch here are Will Jones for the Cabarrus Warriors and Caden Pursuti for the Concord Spiders. Will Jones, very talented running back. Helped the Cabarrus Warriors get their first win on the season on the road at Raleigh Ravenscroft, usually a pretty good team in that area of the state. And then Caden Presutti, I saw him up close at one of our camps. He's a very athletic young man. He'll play both offense and defense. He'll play some DB on defense, and then he'll, get on offense and run the football, usually on, sweeps or outside running plays to take advantage of his speed. So for these guys, both of these teams have had schedule adjustments because, of the pandemic. It's going to be interesting to see, how they both approach this game. I think Concord will have a bit of a size advantage on the lines, but, the Cabarrus Warriors have some very talented young men that have grown up. As freshmen, they, had a good season last year, and now they're just kind of staying together as sophomores and juniors. So really interested to see who pulls that one out for sure. All right, our next game, we have Covenant Day at Metrolina Christian. Covenant Day 1-0 on the season, getting their first win over the Carolina Bearcats. I mentioned them mistakenly earlier. And Metrolina Christian's at 2-1. They lost for the first time last week to a very talented Charlotte Latin team. So our players to watch in this one are C.J. Smith and J.D. Williams. C.J. Smith for Covenant Day. I've kind of highlighted him a couple times in the past. Very talented young man. He'll play some linebacker on defense, and then he can play some wide receiver on offense. So he gets the ball in his hands. He's a very shifty guy. And then on defense, his ability in space to run plays down, especially from the backside away from him, is one of the things I like about him. And then J.D. Williams, I've seen up close at our camp. He's a freshman, but he's very talented. He moves very well in space. He's very fluid. He's able to catch the ball at the backfield. And he's had a good start to his season as well. So 2 impact players for both of those teams right there. All right, our next game is Forest Hills at Charlotte Latin. Forest Hills coming into this season, good start to the season at 2-1. Their player to watch is Caden Smith, one of their leading tacklers on the defensive side of the football. He's going to be very important because Charlotte Latin has a couple of guys that can make some plays, especially in the passing game. Our player to watch is Justin Wheeler for Charlotte Latin. Obviously, we've seen him up close a couple times. Very accurate with the football. He's not the biggest quarterback. He's about 5'11", but he's got a good, strong arm and throws it well. And Charlotte Latin is off to a 2-0 start. And they are, really kind of trying to change things around after a tough spring season. And, we'll see if they can keep it going, in the home game they got this week. All right. Big game right here for our next one. This is a area rival game. Even though they're in different counties, they're very close to each other. We have Weddington, 3-0, going on the road to take on Ardrey-Kell, who is 2-0. And our players to watch between 2 very strong defensive teams, ironically, are our quarterbacks. Grady Brosterhouse for Weddington, has made some plays, throughout the season where, when his team has needed him, he has stepped up and delivered game-winning plays, which is a great sign, obviously for Weddington. And then for Jack Curtis, when you're playing a Weddington team that's not going to make a lot of mistakes on defense, you're going to have the ability to, make plays with the football down the field. I think the team that is able to make the big plays in this one over the top, because you're not going to be able to drive, 80, 90 yards, consistently on either one of these defenses. That's the team that's going to win this game. All right, our next game is we have the West Charlotte Lions at 2-0. Good start for Coach Sam Griner this year. Going over to play Garinger. Our players to watch in this one, Endine McDowell for West Charlotte, has made some big plays in 2, close games to kind of, set the tone for West Charlotte victories. He had the big kickoff return in the second half, against Harding. And then last week he made some contributions in the victory over Independence. And then Garinger for Will Smith. Will Smith is a returning all-conference offensive lineman. He'll have to, step up and, hold the water, so to speak, for Garinger when they're on the offensive side of the football. We know what the situation is, for Garinger. It's tough, and when you're building things, you got to take a stair-step approach. So it's the small victories that you have to look for in this game. Getting Westshawed off the field, getting first downs, things of that nature. The small victories lead to the big victories. So, pray that both teams, stay healthy and have a good game. All right, our next game here is going to be a huge game that's got a little bit of spice to it. We got Hickory Ridge coming off a win over South Point that we were at 27-7. Going on the road to take on Chambers. And, of course, everybody knows Chambers, number 1 in the state. I think they're number 15 in the nation now. Coming off a win over Glenn out of the Winston-Salem area. So our players to watch, 2 obvious ones for this one. And I named them because we had a little bit of social media going back and forth. We had Christian Hamilton for Hickory Ridge, who we did an interview with after the game. And he pretty much, said that he was, confident about going into the game against Chambers, and, they're not, afraid. And I'm summarizing that. And then, of course, we posted on, Instagram, and then, our other player to watch, Dalen Hollywood Smothers, responded saying, you be careful what you wish for. And I'm summarizing that again. So this will be an exciting game. I expect both teams to come out with confidence and, with some swag. It'll be exciting. I'm sure that, when you have star players at their peak focus and intensity, you usually get some special things that happen. So if you don't have a game to go to Friday night, I would come, to this one to see all this talent that's going to be on the field on both sides of the ball. From both teams, for sure. All right, our next game, we have Eastmont and Olympic. Players to watch for both sides. We have Bruce Perry, big number 44 for Eastmont. Tough, rugged running back. He's also playing some defensive end, I believe. We saw Eastmont in week 1 against Barry. And then for Olympic, we have Elite Iron. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Very talented defensive tackle. For the Trojans, and the Trojans are being quietly off to a good start here. I believe either they're 2-0 or 3-0. I can't remember exactly. I know they beat Sun Valley and they beat Hopewell last week. Eastmont's off to a little bit of a tough start. We'll see if they can kind of get things turned around. They got a young team. They're playing a lot of young guys. Kind of learning on the run under Coach Sanders over there. So you look at it, and Olympic is probably the favorite here, but you can't sleep on anyone for sure. All right, our next game. This is a very interesting game to me. This is Barry at Northmont. Barry has been off the past couple of weeks because of the pandemic. So I know they're excited to be back in action. Northmont's coming off a 27-14 win over Harding for their first win on the season. So. Players to watch, quarterback Jaleel Quick for Barry. When we saw him earlier this season against Eastmont, threw the ball very well, especially down the field. He had nice rhythm with his receiver, Christian McDonald, hooked up for a couple of touchdowns. Also hooked up with Antoine Bell. Devin Cunningham had a touchdown catch against Harding last week, tight end. It's always hard to account for a tight end, and that's going to be an interesting matchup against Barry's linebackers and safeties, how they kind of account for him, because Northmont has some other players that can make some things happen too. So interesting matchup here by 2 teams that are closely ranked in our CMS best to last. All right, our next game are Carolina Bearcats at Providence Day. The Carolina Bearcats lost by 1 last week to Covenant Day, 20-19. Providence Day off to a little bit of a slow start at 0-2. They've played, some tough teams though. They played Weddington in their week 1, and then they went down to Georgia last week against another very good team down there. So this is their home opener. Their player to watch is their quarterback, Grant Logan, who has a cannon for an arm. He's a very talented young man. He's got some really talented receivers to throw to. And I'm expecting Providence Day to get it going this week. After you play two tough teams like that, playing a team like the Bearcats who have some talent, but it's kind of a situation where sometimes they're not as together over the year to year, so to speak. So playing that kind of team early is better than playing these guys later on, because I think they'll be a tougher team later in the season. But expect some good stuff from Providence Day this week. Try to get in the win column for sure. All right, our next game is Mount Pleasant at Northwest Cabarrus. Mount Pleasant, we're going to have Coach Johns on our show, their head coach this week. Players to watch here, Brennan Jones. He is their leading rusher. He also plays defense, and he's a very talented young man. Looking at his highlights, I love the way he plays the game. It's constant energy is the best way I can describe it. He doesn't take any plays off. It's really good to watch. And then True Sierra, one of our best receivers from our last camp that we had. He's a game breaker. He's a game breaker, and he's made some things happen for the Northwest Cabarrus offense. The key here for Northwest Cabarrus is they've got to stop the Mount Pleasant run game. When they lost to North Lincoln, they gave up a lot of rushing yards. Mount Pleasant is a team that's going to run the football, point blank and period. So they got to find a way to slow that down and, find a way to move the ball against a very strong defense. They've only given up 7 points in 3 games all season long. So it's a tall task for Northwest Cabarrus. Let's see if they can get it done this week. All right, our next game is Crest at North Gaston. A little matchup on the west side of things, Cleveland versus Gaston County here. Players to watch, of course, the star defensive lineman for Crest, Eli Hall, who's committed to Wake Forest. He's just a very talented young man coming off the edge. He can play some inside if he needs to as well. And then Brian Coley for North Gaston is the best receiver you probably never heard of. He's very talented. He's more of a slot guy. But they move him around all over in their offense. He's their leading receiver. And for the offense that, Coach Justin Clark likes to run, he's a big, important component in what they do. So, we'll see if North Gaston can pull, an upset here. But Crest has not played much because of the pandemic. And I know North Gaston has had some things, rescheduled for the same reason. So, both these teams I know excited to be out on the field on Friday night, for sure. All right, our next game is 2 teams in the upstate of South Carolina that have, kind of got off to a slow start. Lancaster, a bit of a different situation, delayed with the pandemic. 0-1, they lost their first game last week. And then Fort Mill, who's sitting at 0-2. Both of the players to watch are on the defensive line, and kind of both play the same position at defensive end. Fred Twitty from Lancaster is a 6'3", 250-pound player that, I think is a college-level player looking at his highlights. Very, physical at the point of attack. And then Miller Schaus, had a strong game earlier this season. I believe he was named player of the game for one of their Fort Mill games. I believe he had 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, forced fumble. He's another big kid. I believe he's sitting around 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds. So 2 defensive linemen, are impact players for both of these teams as they both try to get in the win column, down in the upstate. All right, our next game is Myers Park at Buford, Georgia. I love seeing all of our area teams kind of getting out of the area a bit. It used to be a big thing not too long ago where, we couldn't get our teams to, get outside of the state hardly, much less going to another state outside the Carolinas. So, I applaud, our athletic directors and coaches, kind of taking on these interstate battles. So for Myers Park, I had their player to watch as Luis Urbina, big offensive lineman. You get out to, playing teams that you're really not that familiar with, your offensive line has got to come ready to play. And, I think he's, a very talented young man that's a little bit under the radar in terms of his recruiting, but he's a very talented player. I believe 6'2", 6'3", 300 plus. He's a big man for sure. Looking up Buford, Buford is more of a run-first team. Looking at ratio, it looked like their ratio was 3-1 as far as run versus pass. So obviously that Myers Park defense is going to have to be ready to take on, a running attack. We saw against Huff in week 1. Huff had some success, running the football, a bit with their combination of backs and J.T. Smith and Xavier Turner-Knox. So, that's going to be the big key for Myers Park to get a road victory. But I do like them, in this game after just kind of looking at what Buford does. I think Myers Park has enough to get it done. And that would be a big win for the state. So we're pulling for the Mustangs in that one. All right, our next game is High Brighton at Shelby. And our player to watch here is the big D tackle for the Golden Lions, Santana Hopper, who had a viral highlight against Kings Mountain where he just picked up a running back and slammed him to the ground. It was crazy. We know he's an intensely, what's the word I'm looking for? Focused young man, and he plays, with that edge that you like, that your defensive linemen, want to play with, playing on that borderline of, intense but not too over the top, I guess is the best way to put it. High Brighton traditionally has been a very heavy run team, so I know that's something Shelby had seen many times over in Cleveland County. So I have no doubts that the Golden Lions will be ready, and we've got them, ranked pretty good in the 30 dozen, and we'll see if they can stay undefeated, on the season. Now, this next one is very interesting. We have Blessed Trinity. They're out of Georgia, coming up to Charlotte to take on Charlotte Catholic. This is a fun matchup. Now, Blessed Trinity is 1-2, but the player to watch for these guys, and I haven't normally put the player to watch out there for these out-of-area teams, but I had to for this one. So looking them up, they have the number 1 running back in the class of 2023, and Justice Haynes. And I looked him up on Twitter, and I had to follow him because I was that impressed with what I saw. I mean, this kid, man, he can go. He can go, and he gets into space. He does some special things. He's number 1 for a reason, and then he can do some things in the passing game as well. So we know Catholic is well coached. We know, they're going to scheme to make sure that this Justice Haynes does not get into space. They're going to keep outside contained really well, or as well as they can. This kid is very talented, and they're going to rally to the football. So for Charlotte Catholic, I would expect to see maybe some 8-man fronts to force Blessed Trinity to throw the football. Once again, they are a team traditionally that is run first. Looking at their stats from last season, where they were 8-0, and then they lost their first home playoff game last season. So they'll have a chip on their shoulder coming in here, especially at 1-2. I don't think that's where they expected to be at this point. But Catholic, of course, off to a great start. Their player to watch is the tight end, Jack Larson. It's funny, he's only got 5 catches, but you look at the stats, he is their big play guy. And you don't normally see that, but we know what the deal is with Charlotte Catholic, around here. They're going to run, and they can run the ball well with, their mix of backs that they do. And then they're going to hit that, play action, or they're going to hit that little rollout, and Larson's going to run, the flag route, or he'll run the seam, or, whatever it is, and, he'll be wide open. I'm laughing because I coached against it, and no matter how many times you coach it, they're still finding a way to pop it. So if you want to see, a really special talent in Justice Haynes, for Blessed Trinity, I would go to Charlotte Catholic on Friday night if you're really big into recruiting, especially. That'd be a special chance to see a highly recruited young man. All right, our next game is West Lincoln coming down to take on Ashbrook, and Ashbrook finally gets to play. The pandemic has hit them really hard, and they're just glad to be on the field finally. Friday night. This is the team that we've had projected to be one of the better teams in Gaston County this season. So there was a lot of excitement going into this, and it's been long delayed, but now it looks like they're able to finally get out there. Our player to watch is Carmelo Best. He's a dynamic young man. He can play the running back spot. He can play a slot receiver. Ashbrook will find different ways to get the football in his hands and let him go to work. So, for West Lincoln, it's tough when you don't have. I don't think Ashbrook scrimmage. So you have no film. You have to go back to last season to try to get an idea of the team that you're playing. So it's going to be tough for West Lincoln in that first part of the game to adjust. But if Ashbrook gets off to a fast start, I like their chances. If they don't, and West Lincoln has a chance to adjust to what they're seeing, I like West Lincoln's chances. So a bit of a toss-up game here right now. All right, our next game is Broome, coming up to play Indian Land in the upstate of South Carolina. Indian Land, has been hit with the pandemic as well. I think their player to watch, though, is their very talented young, I say young, he's a senior, very talented linebacker, Kelly Idahan. I hope I said that right. But wears number 8, and I've seen him in person, and he will lay the wood. We saw him against when they played South Point last year, and he had a hit that I think went kind of viral for us when we put the highlight up. But I think he's a big 22 kid from WSOC as well, and is well deserved. I think he's all conference. He's got a lot of accolades with him, and from what I've seen, on his social media, he's a team leader as well. So, they got in the win column. They beat Nation Forward a couple weeks ago. That was a big win for them. So we'll see if they can keep that, momentum going after, getting back from the pandemic. All right. Our next game is Hammond coming up to play Country Day. And Country Day's kind of had a tough start. They lost a lot of guys to graduation last year. But there's still some talent on that team, and that's reflected in our player to watch here in Spencer Mermans. He was a guy that I highlighted a couple times before. He's changed numbers. He wore 77 last year. Now he's wearing 44. And he's playing kind of a hybrid role, fullback / move guy, H-back, tight end position on offense. But he's still playing defensive line. So I think his strongest position is on defense, coming off the edge. He's 6'6", 260, 270. Definitely a college prospect. I'm excited to see, what he can do to try to help Country Day get in the win column here. I think they've got a chance here against, Hammond. All right, big game right here that's next. We got the Huff Huskies at 3-0 going on the road to take on Cox Mill, who is also 3-0. And, of course, there's a big correlation here. Coach Baker, now the head coach at Cox Mill, was the former offensive coordinator at Huff. So, he knows a lot of those guys. The Huff guys know Coach Baker. So there's not going to be a lot of secrets from the scheme standpoint. So good matchup from the coaching, chess match here. Players to watch, quarterback Tad Hudson, of course, committed to North Carolina. I got reports from when they played Mooresville that he was really on point in throwing the football and putting it in great spots against one-on-one matchups. And I saw, the film, and I tell you, one thing that's underrated are the Huff wide receivers, and we don't talk about them enough, and I'm going to change that because those guys are making some plays, down the football field. It's fun to watch. And if, for Cox Mill, your player to watch is Colin Reese. When you got a team like Huff, who is really strong, especially on offense and defense, you got to find ways to make things happen. I think special teams, if Cox Mill is going to pull what's a perceived upset here, is going to be a big part of that. And Colin Reese made some plays, on special teams, earlier this season, and that's what they're going to have to try to lean on is that third phase. They try to make up a difference, for Huff's ability on offense and defense, for sure. All right, our next game right here, we have Burns. Tough loss last week to Kings Mountain, going up the mountain to take on Watauga, who had a tough loss. I believe to Maiden. Maiden got into them pretty good, and Watauga is usually a pretty strong team. So it'll be interesting to see how Burns comes out here because Watauga, is kind of like a Charlotte Catholic where they run the football. They have a unique offense that you have to prepare for. And the player to watch for Burns is Azari Brown, who plays defense, number 6. He's an outside linebacker, and he'll also get in on offense some and do some things. He'll catch the football, down the football field for him. I know Coach Devine, was disappointed in that loss to Kings Mountain. They had got off to a good start. Close games. All 3 of the games have been really close. They've been one-score games, an 8-6 win over Forest View, and then 21-20 win over Crest before losing 19-14 to Kings Mountain. So I think they're wanting to get a bigger margin this week just for the blood pressure levels to go down a little bit. So good luck to Burns as they travel up the mountain this week. We got an interesting upstate matchup right here next. We've got Nation Ford taking on Northwestern. Players to watch are the 2 quarterbacks who are very supremely talented. Carson Black for Nation Ford has gotten off to another good start this year and throwing the football for the Falcons, who got into the win column last week over River Bluff. And then Northwestern has bounced back from that opening season loss to South Point, and they're starting to play really well. They defeated Clover last week in big fashion, and then Will Madison had a great game, throwing 5 touchdown passes in that victory last week. I'm not surprised with that. Northwestern, one of the top teams in the 5A in South Carolina. Nation Ford got a tough matchup here. We'll see if they can pull what would be perceived as an upset down there in the upstate. All right, our next game, Catawba Ridge at West Cabarrus. It's an interesting matchup here. Catawba Ridge, they're coming off a bit of a surprise loss to a good Greenwood team, out of South Carolina. Their player to watch, of course, is, Jaden Davis, supremely talented young man, top quarterback or top player overall in the class of 2024. I'm sure he'll be chomping at the bit to get back out there and atone, for a tough loss. And then for West Cabarrus, their player to watch is Jaden Hare. He's a big defensive tackle, 6'4", 350 pounds. He's tough to move in that interior. So when Catawba Ridge is trying to run the football, that's a young man you're probably going to have to double team and account for in the run game. But, the biggest thing for West Cabarrus here is they're going to have to contain, the Catawba Ridge offense, their ability to hit big plays down the football field. They do some good things schematically on offense. They like to scheme some things up, use some motion. I really like what, Coach Liniak does on that side of football. So for West Cabarrus, they got to stay in the game, prevent those big plays from happening, and make it a 4-quarter game here. But West Cabarrus is a nice place to play football for you Catawba Ridge fans coming up. You'll enjoy the facilities. It's a newer school, and it should be a good time on Friday night. And the last game we're going to look at is an interstate matchup. We got Mallard Creek finally able to play. They went 1-0. They defeated Providence last week, getting a lot of love for it, and deservedly so after going through what they've had to go through with the pandemic. They're going on the road to take on, Gaffney, a traditional South Carolina power. They're good once again, as always. So it's going to be a good test, for the Mavericks. I think taking a step up from Providence and playing Gaffney. The player to watch is Bryce Boyd, big offensive lineman. We had him ranked in the CMS best in the preseason. He's a talented guy. You need a first down, short yardage. You want to run behind Big Boyd. Get it done, man. So we wish Mallard Creek safe travels down to Gaffney this week. Not too far of a drive, but far enough to make it feel like you're really going somewhere. All right, so, once again, this is Between the Lines. We'll do this every week. We really want to kind of preview the games and showcase the players to watch on both sides. If you're a player that's interested in being featured on Between the Lines, shoot us a DM. We'll be glad to get you out there, get you some focus, get you some attention, and hopefully shine a little bit of spotlight on you for what you're doing on the football field between the lines this season.